Hello, and welcome to episode 8 of Not Another F1 Blog. This will deal with the first race of the 2011 Formula 1 World Championship, the Australian Grand Prix. Sebastian Vettel got his title defence off to the perfect start with a dominating victory. Lewis Hamilton finished in second place, despite damaging the floor of his car, and Vitaly Petrov took a superb third place for Renault. There were several incidents during the race, but the two that I would like to discuss here are Jenson Button's pass on Felipe Massa and Sauber's disqualification from the race. On lap 11 at turn 11, Jenson Button attempted to overtake Felipe Massa, but was forced to cut the chicane in order to complete the move. On completing the move, Button did not return the position to Massa, and would likely have been instructed by the stewards to do so, but Massa made his pit stop before this was possible, and so Button was given a drive-through penalty instead. What are Button's defences in this? One possible defence is that he was past Massa and therefore had track position. Unfortunately, I am unable to find any replays of this incident on YouTube that show the incident from a useful camera angle, probably because Bernie's already had them taken down, so I cannot examine this rigorously. However, from my memory of the race, Button at most had his nose in front of Massa's car, which in previous cases, such as Lewis Hamilton's penalty at the 2008 French Grand Prix, has not been classed as being passed. If McLaren really think that Button would be classed as being passed in that case, then they must have very short memories. In fact, considering the trouble that McLaren have been in for doing this in the past, it really beggars belief that Button didn't hand the position back immediately. They claimed they were waiting for an instruction from the FIA to let Massa through, but as they are coming up to a pit stop phase, this is a plainly stupid thing to do. They didn't have time to wait for the FIA, and they really should have considered that. Even if they weren't coming up to a pit stop phase, they should have learned from Fernando Alonso's penalty at last year's British Grand Prix, where Fernando Alonso illegally passed Robert Kubica by cutting a chicane, but then Kubica retired from the race before Alonso could let him back through. So, in conclusion, I can see no reasonable defence at all for Button, and he and his team earned their penalty through outright idiocy. Sauber had an excellent start to the season, with rookie Sergio Perez finishing his first race in 7th place, and teammate Kamui Kobayashi following closely behind in 8th. However, the cars are found to be illegal according to Articles 3.10.1 and 3.10.2 of the Formula 1 technical regulations, which have been linked in the underbar. As a result, the team has been disqualified from the race, and both team and drivers have been stripped of their points. It's all a massive disappointment for Sauber, and especially for Perez after such an excellent debut race, but if they ran an illegal car, then they must accept the punishment for doing so. Even so, I have several major reservations about the decision to disqualify Sauber from the race. My first is that, as a fan, I cannot stand finding out after the TV coverage is finished that the result I saw has been changed. If I cannot be confident that the on-screen result of a race is going to stand, then I see little point in watching the race at all. I don't have so much of an objection to it if it is made clear on screen that a specific incident is under investigation, and there is a significant chance that this may cause the result to change, because then the on-screen coverage of the race retains its credibility. I would not, for example, have objected to a disqualification of Michael Schumacher at the Hungarian Grand Prix, although it would still have been a bit annoying. However, petty technical regulation infringements do not fall into this category, and so I would much prefer it if these were punished in some other way, for example by a ban from the following race. Admittedly, this system has its problems. Because of infringements in the final race, they would have to be treated in a different way. Even if disqualification was necessary in those cases, I would still much prefer the system over the current one, despite the inconsistency of the final race being treated differently. I also admit that post-race disqualifications such as this are nothing new. They've been around for as long as Formula 1 itself, but that doesn't make them a good thing. However, even if I were to ignore all of this and accept post-race disqualifications as part of the sport, I would still have further problems with this decision. Was it spotted in pre-race scrutineering? If so, then why were Kobayashi and Perez allowed to risk their own lives and those of others by competing in a race in which they are to be excluded anyway? If not, then how would it be fair to disqualify Sauber for running cars that had been declared legal in pre-race scrutineering? I appreciate that it is not practical, or even possible, to perform every test on every car in pre-race scrutineering, but they should at least be able to check for any violations that really are major enough to warrant disqualification from the race. For violations that are too minor and technical to be tested pre-race, the heavy punishment of race disqualification does not fit the crime, in my opinion. The other thing is that Sauber are claiming that they did not gain any advantage from running the infringing parts. According to the rules as they are written now, this would not hold any weight in an appeal. Even if it were true, what matters is not whether an advantage is gained, but whether or not it is within the rules. However, is such a literal interpretation really necessary, or should there be some leeway for when no advantage is gained? I wouldn't mind seeing a limited amount of leeway, since one major reason for rules such as this is to prevent drivers from gaining an unfair advantage. If such an advantage is not gained, then the whole debate is really rather pointless. On the other hand, I do realise that people could have very little regard for the minor regulations under such a system, and so if there were any leeway at all, it should only be in cases where it can be demonstrated that no advantage was gained. If it's debatable as to whether an advantage was gained, then there should still be a penalty. It should be noted that none of these reservations changes the fact that Sauber should be disqualified according to the rules as they are currently written. I am not campaigning for the Saubers to be reinstated here. My reservations deal only with how I believe that the system should ideally be run, and could potentially be changed to deal with future cases. I'm now going to finish on a note completely unrelated to the Australian Grand Prix. I haven't yet heard anything about a selection process for a 13th team for next year. When will something be done? If new teams for next year are to be decided through a selection process, then now is the time to do it, so that any teams have a reasonable chance to make preparations for the 2012 season. I don't want to see them leaving it too late like they did last year. So, that wraps up episode 8 of Not Another F1 Blog. I'll see you again for episode 9. Until then though, that's it. Have a nice day.